slides to come up? Yeah. Do you want to put it on presentation mode? Yeah.
It is on my computer. Is it not showing up as presentation mode?
Yeah, it is now.
It is now.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, it is now.
Okay.
Thanks, colleagues, and welcome to our presentation. My name is Adeghe, and I'm the Associate Dean for Inclusivity for the University of Wolverhampton. And I'll be doing this session with Matt Horton, who is our Evaluation Manager for the university. What I'm going to do before I hand over to Matt is just to give you an overview of the context of our university. We are an anchor institution, we say, for and of the Black country as well, and social justice is central to our mission as a university of opportunity. And one of the things we've pledged to do in our 2030 vision is to eradicate all our gaps. It's pretty ambitious considering where we are now as a university, but we're hoping we can do that before 2030. We do have the Race Equality Charter Bronze Award, which we gained in November 2020. And accompanying that was a robust action plan to address the identified barriers by 2023. I have to say what we hadn't foreseen is what we're having to deal with now as a university, which is a huge transformation exercise that in a sense I know will scupper some of the objectives that we've put in our action plan. And we're yet to look at what the data is telling us now about some of the actions we pledge to take. For instance, we've got two subgroups that look after race equality charter actions. One is the staff experience group, and the other is the student experience group. And a few of the actions we have in the staff experience group is to address the issues we have in terms of representation, which will be familiar to a lot of you here, where we have a roughly 50-50 split in terms of our student and staff demographic between our global majority students and our white students. But the staff profile is 23% academic staff to 50% students. So what we have in our action plan is to increase the numbers of our academic global majority staff by 6% every year. But because of the transformation exercise, I'm not too sure that will happen now because lots of people have left and we need to see where we are. In terms of our students, some of the actions clearly around the awarding gap. We have issues there and we're trying to work towards that. We are reviewing all our assessments to make sure that they are more inclusive. We have a good number of international students. If we look at the next slide, that will tell you what the demographic is in terms of our international students, and we do have a responsibility to make sure that what we offer them is inclusive as well. So we have actions around boarding schemes for them, and we have academic coaches whose main roles is to act as to offer pastoral support to our international students. So we are well aware that one of the ways in which we can make sure these actions happen is by having that robust whole institutional approach to research and evaluation. And Matt is going to talk to you now about the steps we are taking as an institution to make sure that happens. One of the first things we did was the appointment of Matt as a university evaluation manager, because prior to that, we really didn't have a well-coordinated approach to the interventions we carried out. So we were doing things and we weren't too sure the extent to which what we were doing was making any impact. So what we're doing now is looking at what we're doing and deciding what we need to stop doing because it's not making any difference to our students. So I'll just invite Matt now to take over from me. Thanks, Matt.
Okay, thank you, Ada. So I'm going to provide an overview of what we're doing to improve evaluation and practice across the university. So this is mainly being supported by reviewing and assessing where we are, embedding a culture of evaluation, robust evaluation approaches and monitoring how we're progressing on this journey. this approach that we're using may be useful to HEIs in supporting the stronger emphasis on evaluation as set out in the new draft APP guidance, and also supporting improvements in metrics across the TEF. So I'll pick up on some of these areas in a bit more detail now. So in terms of review and assessment, my role started in around January 21, and like Ada said, it was to support a more coordinated strategic approach to embedding robust evaluation practices across the university and mainly associated to the APP and TEF. So firstly, we set out to develop a better understanding of current evaluation practices across the university, faculties and schools. And to do this, we conducted a scoping exercise to understand what APP projects were being delivered beyond those which were in our APP, where they were being delivered, and if they were being evaluated and what the strength of the evidence was. So this kind of helped identify gaps in provision in terms of student support, if there was any duplication across faculties, and where evaluation should be directed to support our priorities and an understanding of what works. Following this, we conducted a skills audit survey to identify staff strengths and gaps in terms of evaluation methods. And then finally, we also looked at OFS evaluation self-assessment toolkit results. So this is known as the SEF. Toolkit's available on the OFS website and enables HEIs to review their current evaluation practice against several dimensions. So our initial SEF conducted in 2019 provided us with a baseline in terms of these evaluation practices and how well embedded they were up to this point. And this initial assessment kind of showed there were a few theories of change being embedded and few experimental designs as well. So draft OFS APP guidance, like I said, supports a stronger emphasis on robust evaluation culture, with a requirement to increase the quantity and quality of evaluation, develop theories of change for all listed activities, and for these findings to be published. Obviously, the guidance will be confirmed at the end of this month, but we've been using these levers in terms of the APP to embed evaluation into projects to see what does and does not work in terms of closing gaps in student outcomes. And so how have we done this? So from the review and assessment phase discussed earlier, we identified gaps and areas where we could improve evaluation practice to embed a more strategic approach. So this has been supported by increasing capacity and expertise, by encouraging more academics to lead on evaluation projects. And to support this, we set up a APP What Works network recently. And we also have funding pots to commission evaluation work for academics aligned to strategic priorities, so where we have the greatest gaps. We're also providing CPD via workshops and resources to embed more robust standards of evidence. And this training is provided on theories of change and different experimental approaches, including bringing in comparison groups. So really engaging academics and training for staff is important, as our skills audit identified that staff lacked the capacity to evaluate projects, and many staff were not from a social science background. So bringing in academics has been helpful to foster collaboration and, importantly, to bring a more independent view in terms of what works. as well, which has been helpful. We've also ensured evaluation is embedded across the university through various reporting lines, so various strategic committees, and we also set up an evaluation group with student representation on that. And to support wider collaboration, last year we set up a West Midlands evaluation group. So within that group, we kind of share best practice in terms of evaluation, evidence in terms of what works, what doesn't work, and hopefully that group will push for more collaboration between partner universities in terms of evaluation. We've also helped to embed evaluation culture just by simplifying processes a bit more sometimes. So in terms of the ethical review process, it's a bit easier to navigate now, and all evaluations for approval go through one ethics committee rather than various schools and faculties. Okay, so in terms of the workshops, our skills audit found that we were quite good around the qualitative aspects, and there was more training needed in terms of experimental methods, so along the lines of the standards of evidence from the FS. So part of the training, like I said, focuses on TOCs, but also experimental and causal methods as well. So that's kind of the basis of a lot of the training that we're doing to identify what works. So bringing in comparison groups and a few randomized controlled trials where we can. Okay, so over the last 2 years, I've supported about 36 evaluation projects. Some of them are listed here, and most of them are with an emphasis on the APP and gap closing between global majority and white students, and based on students' home postcodes, so IMD advantaged and disadvantaged. So these projects have been across the whole life cycle, from access to progression. And as you can see, some of the projects are quite cross-cutting, so they're across the student life cycle, so they touch upon more than one student outcome. Okay, and again, across the student life cycle, we've got a number of evaluation toolkits or assessments that are completed by students on an annual basis. So some of these toolkits are used for two purposes. So a baseline assessment, identification of student needs so that appropriate support can be put in place. Academic coaches use an assessment like this, and at the same time to measure shifts in outcomes once the evaluation is done again. So the assessment's kind of used as an evaluation pre-post design, so it's used more seamlessly, I suppose, with assessment and evaluation together, and to make better use of resources and avoid duplication of effort. And another important thing about these toolkits is that they're validated. So we need to understand if items are associated to student outcomes. So for example, in the School of Sport, developed a self-efficacy measure that could accurately predict 80% of students who later dropped out. So from that evidence, we can kind of use a learner analytics approach. So identify students early on who are most in need, and then tailor interventions to those needs. So using a bit more of a preventative model, I suppose. Some of these toolkits have already been validated, like the careers survey. We're validating the belonging survey. We're doing more work on that. There's some work being done on the academic coaches assessment ILP at the moment to check the validity of items, and obviously TASO are also conducting validation work for a student access and success toolkit and I've done some work around that area as well in some research that I've done. Okay, so in terms of monitoring progress, each academic year we monitor the progress of evaluation projects for our evaluation tracker dashboard. This outlines the number of projects across faculties and the focus of each project in terms of student groups and outcomes and the standards of evidence being met. So the tracker provides more detail on each project as well than this, including obviously staff who are leading on the projects, the progress that's been made and the methods that are being employed. So alongside this tracker, we complete the OFS CEF each year to review our progress in embedding robust evaluation standards. And really this helps understand our strengths and where improvements need to be made. So since 2009, we can see that we've made significant improvements in the areas of strategic context and evaluation design. There's more information on the CEF in terms of those different dimensions, like I said, on the OFS website. CEF also shows that since 2019, the proportion of projects employing experimental designs has increased from 50 to 94%. And that's been partly supported by, I suppose, doing workshops with staff and academics and bringing academics in to do some of this work, because it is quite complex to do. So that's helped support this drive forward. I'd say the CEF toolkit's really useful to support an evaluation review of the extent to which your institutions are embedding robust approaches to evaluation. Like I said, it provides pointers for where improvements may be needed, so you can look at the resource implications for that for the year ahead. So that's me done.
Great. Thank you so much, Adeghe and Matt. That's amazing.